It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. It's a big technology takeover this week on Twit. We've got Alex Kantrowitz. You know him well from the Big Technology Podcast and Substack. His co-host, Ranjan Roy from ReadMargins.com joins us, and we are going to talk about all the big stories. Elon Musk says, I'm changing the name of Twitter today. Activision and Microsoft, the deal is a go, but is it good for gamers? We'll also talk about Apple's victory as they go to the Supreme Court to appeal the latest judgment in Apple versus Epic. And it's the release of a new AI model from Facebook. Why is it a good thing? Alex and Ranjan explain all of that and a whole lot more coming up next. Plus, we say goodbye to an old friend on Twit. This show is brought to you by Cisco Meraki. Without a cloud-managed network, businesses inevitably fall behind. Experience the ease and efficiency of Meraki's single platform to elevate the place where your employees and customers come together. Cisco Meraki maximizes uptime and minimizes loss to digitally transform your organization. Meraki's intuitive interface, increased connectivity, and multi-site management keep your organization operating seamlessly and securely wherever your team is. Let Cisco Meraki's 24/7 available support help your organization's remote, on-site, and hybrid teams always do their best work. Visit meraki.cisco.com/twit.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twit. This Week in Tech, episode 937, recorded Sunday, July 23rd, 2023. Elon's little chisel. This Week in Tech is brought to you by NetSuite. If you've been sizing NetSuite up to make the switch, then you need to know this deal is unprecedented. No interest and no payments for 6 months. Take advantage of this special financing offer and get the visibility and control you need to weather any storm by visiting netsuite.com/twit. And by Mint Mobile. Inflation is everywhere, whether it's gas, utilities, or your favorite streaming services. Thankfully, Mint Mobile can give you a much-needed break. Get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door free. Go to mintmobile.com/twit. And by Collide. Collide is a device trust solution for companies with Okta. They ensure if a device isn't trusted and secure, it can't log into your cloud apps. Visit collide.com/twit to book an on-demand demo today. And by AG1. Take ownership of your health with a simpler, effective investment with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase of a subscription. Go to drinkag1.com/twit. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show we cover the latest week's tech news. We're going to do another takeover. I like these takeovers. The Big Technology Podcast is taking over the show. You all know Alex Kantrowitz, the host and founder of Big Technology Podcast, the author of, is it Always Day One?
Always Day One.
Without the books behind you, I can't remember.
Exactly.
I have
lost all those books.
Always Day One, Amazon guru and big tech expert. We've talked before about the financialization of big tech. I think we'll be talking about that again this week. Great to have you, Alex. And Alex has brought along his co-host on the Big Technology Podcast, Ranjan Roy. You come from the dark side. A trader by trade.
The dark side,
the dark side, a financial guy.
But I saw the light technology.
Yeah? So what were you, did you trade for yourself or for a company?
For one of the larger banks all through the 2000s,
Wow.
In the heyday of trading.
Wow.
And that little global financial crisis kind of was the impetus to try to figure out what I really wanted to do in life.
Took the fun out of it, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it's great to have you both. We have a lot of stories that you will have something to say about, no doubt. I suppose, though, we should begin because the time is running out on Twitter. Not the company, just the logo, just the name, just the bird Elon got up in the middle of the night last night and started tweeting. Always a bad idea. He wants to get rid of the Bluebird and replace it with an X. He said interim logo goes live later today, which is why I want to do this story now. In fact, for all I know, it's already live. Remember, the company that owns Twitter, the parent company, is called X. In fact, I don't think there is a company called Twitter anymore. I think he renamed Twitter to X Corp. And it sounded as if the richest man in the world just asked Twitter users to come up with a logo for him because he can't afford it. I don't know. They also want to change the color scheme from blue to black. Now I got to just check and see. This may be another one of those Elon Musk's I know how to get press moments. Yeah, it's still a blue bird. You know, there's a name for this bird. Did you know that?
What's the bird's name? No, I had no idea.
I didn't know it either, but it was a Jeopardy question, so I figure it's got to be true. And I've forgotten now. What is the name of the Twitter bird? It was like Jack.
The bird's name is X.
Joey. X.
Full circle.
Larry.
Joey the bird.
No, Larry.
Larry the bird.
Larry the bird.
Larry, as in Larry Bird.
I see where this is going.
Celtics great. Biz Stone tweeted the name was chosen to honor Larry Bird of the Boston Celtics. But I'd never heard that before. But I did get the answer right in my mind because they said a social media site with a bird as a logo named Larry. I thought that's got to be Twitter. So no more Larry and apparently no more bird, except it hasn't happened yet. Do you guys have an opinion on Elon? Because, we're all wondering what the hell.
We do have an opinion on Elon.
What's your opinion on Elon, Alex?
Well, I'll start. I mean, obviously the guy is a very talented entrepreneur. I think you can't really take away what he's built at Tesla and at SpaceX, and this idea of like the Boring Company is kind of cool. And who knows, maybe his XAI company will turn into something. I mean, he is also the founder of OpenAI or co-founder of OpenAI and PayPal. So
yeah, but he pulled out of OpenAI when they said we're going to make a profit, and now he's doing. That was another way he got in the press last week. He announced he's going to do what? An AI that's not going to eat the world.
So yeah, we'll see what it turns into. But he look, when you make announcements like this, I'm looking into what are the resources behind it and who do you hire. And he's bought a bunch of GPUs from NVIDIA, and he's hired people from DeepMind and the University of Toronto.
Yeah, but you know how he's hired them? By offering them inflated stock.
Trick them into thinking. But these people are smart. Like, they are worth a lot of money. They know that. And listen, anyone who spent time talking with folks working in Silicon Valley knows that they are extremely aware of the way that they get paid. And it's very difficult to pull the wool over their eyes. So I think that they probably understood what they were getting into with Elon. But now let me get into
he valued, I think he's going to call it Truth GPT, at $20 billion, and then goes to the biggest names in AI, the real thinkers, the doers, the coders, and says, I'll give you 1%, which is worth $200 million if you come on over. And they should really be thinking twice.
How many employees get 1% of a company as at the start? So look, is it going to work out? No, but would a lot of people in Silicon Valley say this is a worthwhile shot to take? I get 1% of a company that Elon Musk is founding. That's why people are taking the shot. I don't think that they know they can't cash out that stock and say from the day one that they're going to be able to make that money. But 1% of a company is definitely nothing to sneeze at. Most people you start, you get a couple of basis points and you're thrilled. 1% isn't bad.
But I think let's take it back to Larry Bird and the fact that Twitter.com is still blue and full of birds. I think Alex and I always get into this on our weekly segments about Elon. He spoke. He made a major claim. Whether he follows through on it, I think this is the thing that in the medium to long term, Elon is very interesting. In the day-to-day, in the short term, I think it's best to try to ignore him. It's very tough to do that, but I still wonder, for me, Linda Yaccarino What is she thinking? How is she going to approach this? Because, I mean, from the business side, trying to convince advertisers, especially with the rise of threads, that we are a stable place. Come here, come do business. And this is happening. I cannot imagine how tough those calls are.
She had a very interesting tweet about this X thing, where she talks a little bit about what the strategy of Twitter is going to be. So X, if you think about it, is sort of this cross section. And that's what she talks about. X is the future state of unlimited interactivity. Now, listen, there's a lot of cringe going on in this tweet, but let's just pay attention to the details for a second. She says it's going to be centered in audio, video, messaging, payments, and banking, creating a global marketplace for ideas, goods, and services and opportunities powered by AI. X will connect us all in ways we're just beginning to imagine. And she talked about how people have been criticizing Twitter for years.
Can I be honest? But that sounds
bigger.
like a PowerPoint deck straight out of Succession. Like,
okay. So wait, I'm not saying it's going to work, but I'm saying we got a glimpse. They want to do they want to create a marketplace. They want to do payments. There might be goods in there. That's where they're going with this.
X is the future state of unlimited interactivity. Okay, I had not seen that. I see that was about an hour
until you hit the rate limit.
Until we, luckily, I must have hit the rate limit at that point. Yeah. But oh man, poor Linda, just selling an ad, just delivering a stable ad product, I think is the most important test right now versus trying to build the super app of the future. And we've talked about this again. Perhaps that is an opportunity. Perhaps Elon is the one that can deliver it, but I don't know. This kind of day-to-day operation, especially when your business is advertising, I cannot see how this is going to come out on the other side okay.
Yeah, I'm with you. After everything I've said about Elon, the caveat is that what he's done with Twitter has been detrimental to him. I mean, objectively bad for him. And all of his businesses would be, including his new AI company, would be better off if he sold Twitter, and that's what I think he should do.
I think what may happen is it goes bankrupt, and the $13 billion worth of bank equity gets taken back, and the banks own it. And I think maybe that's even what Elon would like, because at this point I feel like, well, who knows what Elon wants? So Elon's just nuts. I don't know what he's looking for.
I know I want JP Morgan to be the bastion of
they're not going to they're not going to do a good job with it either.
Town square that's what I've always dreamed of.
It's always struck me. I almost hate doing Elon stories because I feel played when I do an Elon story. It always strikes me that he woke up at midnight and thought, well, hey, the press hasn't been writing about me in about 48 hours. What can I say that will get me a lot of coverage? And that's, we'll rename it X and give us your thoughts for our new logo. And bing, bada bing, we're talking about it. He seems like a manipulator of the media more than anything else to me.
But he is a newsworthy person, though. I mean, he definitely is a media manipulator, but he does own Twitter, which is a very important social network, maybe the second most important. And then, like he does, I mean, SpaceX and Tesla, like he commands the coverage. I think the media could be better at covering him, but he's certainly newsworthy.
I snuck a spy into the Succession filming and got this PowerPoint slide from The 100, which was, if you remember at the beginning of the season, the company the kids were going to start. Here is how big can it get is the slide. Initial audience, 180 million, English language ready, customer base across the world, hungry for stimulating news and info, multilingual, multifaceted growth opportunities, follow the growth, contagion, financial model applicable, the 100 franchises, of the 100,000s of permutations of the 100 available and scalable audio, events, and dating services. This seems like Elon just took this slide, or at least Linda Yaccarino took this slide for their own. I mean, what I loved about this is his satire. This is Jesse Armstrong's satire of the nuttiness of tech decks, but it's real. I mean, that's exactly what X is, right? It's BS.
Let's not forget Kendall's description as it would be Substack meets Masterclass meets The Economist meets The New Yorker.
I'm glad to know you watch the show.
I just haven't been able to.
That was a great line.
I haven't been able to get this thought out of my mind that Jamie Dimon is eventually going to be making content moderation decisions on Twitter. It's unbelievable.
And he's gonna let us edit tweets even if you don't have a $8 subscription. That's Jamie Dimon for you.
What was it again? Substack meets Masterclass meets the Economist
meets the New Yorker.
That's a description of this show, actually. I think that's exactly what we're doing here. Elon did get some big names, researchers from Google, DeepMind, University of Toronto to join XAI, which is the current name of it. I just want to write it all off, to be honest with you, and just say it's Elon's weird, bizarro world. Meanwhile, Threads use is down to 6 minutes a day. Elon was very nervous about Mark Zuckerberg's Twitter clone. Not doing that well, according. I think Ranjan, you posted this article from Business Insider.
Alex and I talked about this last week on our podcast. I think that coming out as strong as they did and making such a big deal about making it to 100 million users was actually a big mistake. I think even though they claim that they did no quote unquote promotion, Mark Zuckerberg had threaded or posted to Threads or whatever we will call it, I think they clearly, leveraged whatever they had at their disposal. Have you downloaded the app?
Oh, I'm on it.
Yeah. So it basically, your Instagram, it pulls over all of your contacts. It allows you to instantly follow everyone. You don't even have to enter information to create an account. So they clearly made it as frictionless as possible and leverage their billion-strong Instagram user base. But now it's got to be interesting. And normally, I really was thinking back what communities have succeeded. Again, YouTube succeeds. It starts with creators, homegrown creators, people who really make their way up on the platform. Even Twitter, if you think about it, it developed so well and so strongly because it developed its own voice. It developed its own community. Getting to 100 million users who are not sure what to expect, having Paris Hilton tweeting at Taco Bell and Netflix and Spotify and everyone else trying to be funny, I feel does not make for a sticky, community-driven platform. So I don't know.
Well,
we'll
to their
see
credit,
where it goes.
They got the brands to move right over there as fast as possible, and even quite a few celebrity names. That's kind of, in latter day Twitter, was the thing that people said they stayed on Twitter for. The news brands, the consumer brands, and the celebrities. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's an existential business threat to Twitter, whether or not people stick around. But again, they are. And Alex wrote about this. How early advertisers are going to get on there, whether it's Q4 of this year. I think they are going to get every advertiser over there who's going to run away from X.com/Twitter, and they want a safe place to go, and they want a place they can trust. And Meta owns advertisers, and it's another place to go, and they're going to get every one of those ad budgets away from whatever's left at Twitter.
Yeah, and it's more than a safe place. It's Meta's ad platform, which is just able to target people and optimize in a way that's far better than any other social platform could dream of. And Twitter certainly has never held a candle to. So I think when you talk to advertisers, they're not saying, well, I want, a place where I have a more politically correct environment to put my message in front of people. They just said, we want platforms that can make our customers money. And the Meta ad platform is so good that that's where we spend our time, on Meta and on Google, and everything else is an afterthought. And it's just kind of more of that in terms of the monetization potential of Threads. But yeah, it's like Ranjan's totally right here that the overhyping of the user numbers in the beginning was a terrible mistake. And just my experience, I've been using Threads a lot, and my experience there has been that the usage is just, an engagement is way, way down, and growth has tailed off completely, which leads me to believe that, they hit that 100 million user number pretty quickly, but their curve must have just flattened.
Are people going back to Twitter? Is that what you think's happening?
Maybe people are just giving up on this format altogether.
That's what I'm wondering.
Using it a lot less. That's what's happened to me.
Maybe it's the end of social,
Exactly. Well, it's like definitely like you used to. So the utility of these platforms was to know what happens in the moment, right? And Twitter has, because of Elon's algorithmic ranking changes and the end of verification of people that were making news, has made that pre-C utility, much less vital to the platform. And then Threads doesn't even want news on it. So it's like, and your Blue Sky's too small. And
so when Tony Bennett passed away, God bless him, R.I.P., I didn't learn about it on Twitter or on Threads. Right. Used to be that's where you'd find out or at least go if you heard somebody had passed. That's where you'd go. But I don't think that that's the case anymore. That's just one example, obviously. But
the reason that Twitter has struggled to grow past 200 million users or 300 million users if you go monthly is because most of the population is totally okay getting their news on news sites. And they don't need to know it that second. They can know it 5 minutes later when it's on like nytimes.com or the Wall Street Journal. And, while these platforms degrade, and this is sort of the point I was building up to, when these platforms degrade, the 200 million or 300 million of us on Twitter and addicted to Twitter, we are forced to go back to homepages again. And many people are going to be like, well, that's not too bad. And maybe I'll do that instead of being on this app that makes me angry and is filled with outrage and disgusting stuff and ChatGPT influencers.
I hope you're right. Because that would be, I think, the most healthy thing, wouldn't it, for the internet is, I feel like.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, I think that's a good point, because even for me, that question, there's definitely been a transition period where I'm looking for someone to tell me what's happening right now about everything. And then after a few days, you start to realize maybe you don't need to know what's happening right now about everything at that moment. I've started opening the New York Times app more, like starting from there, opening up the FT app.
Going to a news app. Wow.
Going to a news app. It's like 2011 all over again. This is the future. It is. And also, being more topical and specific, only looking for things that I want to know about. Actually, Tech Meme and going to their actual sites like that. I think curators of news that you trust. I think all of these are going to become much, much more valuable than we were all spoiled. Because again, if you had built your Twitter feed in a smart way, that really was the perfect way to tell you exactly what was happening. But it's just not the case anymore.
It's funny because I've been going to Tech Meme for probably a decade and a half as almost my homepage on the internet. But I am doing tech news, so that's the first place I go. But that's interesting because that is a very old school style of site where they're aggregating stories from other news sites, and they used to do it. Gabe used to do it automatically. Now has editors and they do it manually. It is a very old school aggregator.
Yeah, but then even what I love that they do, even add a bit of context to any headline to try to add their own perspective, curate tweets, skeets, threads, whatever else they built into the CMS right now. But I think, again, it does a good job for a community of telling you what's going on. Obviously, how you do that across different interest areas and communities is definitely not solved right now, and maybe doesn't get solved in the way it was before.
That's what's old is new again. Maybe that's the answer, is going back to the old. What's next? Google Reader comes back? I don't know.
If Google
I believe it's going to be, it'll be Substacks and podcasts. That's the bet here.
Yeah.
Named big technology. Named big technology.
I knew that this would be a story for you guys for sure, given your interest in finance and so forth. For the longest time in the U.S., if we want to send payments to friends, we'd use Venmo or PayPal or the Cash App. It turns out, and I did not know this, in the rest of the world, their governments provided clearinghouses that were free and widely available and instantaneous. We just never had one in the U.S. The Federal Reserve Bank has now launched it. It's called FedNow, an instant payment service that costs nothing. Now, of course, it's got to attach to your bank, and your bank may end up charging you, even though it costs nothing for the Fed to do it. They're launching with 41 banks, 15 service providers, including J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of New York Mellon, Bancorp. They plan to add more banks and credit unions as the year goes by. The Fed has always run a clearinghouse that's taken days. Remember writing checks? You'd write a check, you put it in the mail, put a 5-cent stamp on it, and you'd put it in the mailbox. They don't have any of that anymore, by the way. And then it would arrive, and the dentist's office would take it, and they would cash it, and the bank they cashed it at would send it to the Federal Clearinghouse, which, I think somebody with sleeve garters and a green visor would look at it and then stamp it. And then 3 or 4 days later, that money would be transferred over from your account to the dentist. It would clear. That's how we did it until recently. And I think the Fed has finally caught up with the 21st century and the rest of the world. Thoughts on FedNow? You covered the SVB bank run. One consideration, I know, Ranjan, was that this would really supercharge a bank run in the future, make it a lot easier.
No, but I think this is a huge story, because I think this is a perfect example of a friction that has existed in industry over the last 15, 20 years, that anyone who has traveled, anyone who has friends who live abroad, especially in Europe or in Asia, who can send money to each other instantly, they don't think about what's the fee going to be? Is it a wire transfer? What app do I have to use? All this stuff just works, and it should work here. Money should move back and forth very quickly. And I think it's a good reminder that sometimes, like a federal centralized program like this that would be most efficient actually is the right solution. And I think obviously the cryptocurrency dream that was sold for a long time around instant payments and ability to send money. Why can't you send money on a Saturday or when the bank is closed? I think it's finally time that becomes reality. We catch up.
Isn't this proof that crypto won? And this is like a defensive move from the Fed to say, okay, this was our weakness that could have let the Bitcoiners sort of take over. And what's happened now is that, the mainstream way of paying is actually going to resemble a little bit more like what the crypto dream looked like.
Well, it was the dream, but remember, crypto transfers sometimes took a very long time to clear, right? Even though it was fully digital, because of the way Bitcoin worked, it could sometimes take days for a Bitcoin transaction to clear.
This is the true victory that they've pushed the Federal Reserve to be their dream, but even better.
That was exactly what the entire industry wanted.
Satoshi Nakamoto, when he sat down to write that paper, thought about this instant Fed Venmo thing and said, if we could get that to happen,
wow,
I could die happy.
Wow. Check your bank to see if you can get FedNow, and also check to see what they may add on as additional fees. It is widely expected banks will somehow manage to make some money out of this, even though the Fed does not charge for it.
Yeah, but it's also a good reminder, again, I think, public-private partnerships and the potential for them and where they can work well. And this is always with payments, having one centralized source that was connected to every individual bank that could basically, as you said, as Alex said, live the crypto dream and be that ledger. It does not need to be decentralized. It's in fact centralized, and it can match payments instantly, I think. And then, banks can profit off of this, and that's okay. I think, it's how much they charge, and that level of competition obviously will just kind of continue within the banking industry. But having that underlying infrastructure, anyone, again, coming from a trading background, especially I worked in emerging market trading, so seeing how kind of, an efficient infrastructure could then grow entire economies or just help other things happen, I think it was a reminder that, it's something that's been lacking in the U.S. for a while.
I don't know how long ago you were at B of A, Ranjan, but B of A was one of the companies, one of the banks that started Zelle, which was the banking industry's response to Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Apple Pay. A lot of people think Zelle is a problem because it's very easy. If you can trick somebody into Zelling you, you got their money, and the banks aren't going to stand behind it.
I find it's a problem because if I ever say the word Zelle out loud in a social situation, I will be
That's the other problem is kids go, what? You're using Zelle? Could you please Venmo me, please?
You're out of the room. You're kicked out.
Yeah.
But that was also the fraud problems that happened with Zelle. I think were a reminder that it's this eternal tension between friction, especially when it comes to financial services. But remember, Venmo had a lot of issues, especially in its early days when it was trying to grow around fraud or illicit utilization. So I think it's just payments always are a reminder that, it's a battle between friction and
utility.
Ease. Yeah, ease and utility.
This is hysterical because I'm with a bank that is not signing up for FedNow so far. They have a bill pay service, and most of the time it's not an ACH. The bank prints a check, which they put in the mail and send to the payee. Why is it in the United States, where we should be on the cutting edge, we are so far behind every other country in the world? How does Canada or France or any of these other countries, how do they handle the fraud issue? How does the Fed propose to handle the fraud issue? Banks have said, we don't want to be responsible. If you Zelle somebody money, that's your problem, dude. We're not going to give it to you back if it turns out to be fraudulent.
One of the problems that's happened with Zelle, again, is if you accidentally send to the wrong person, if you send too much money. But I think these kind of things, these are just like UX challenges, right? These are however these things are built. When Venmo started, there was no two-factor authentication. So, at a time where you wouldn't even need a secondary input, someone could grab your phone and send money. So I think, every single bank, maybe the Fed, to be part of the program, does put some liability on the banks, which would force them to put in some additional checks. Because remember, so far with Zelle, banks have been so desperate to compete against Venmo on volume that they would do anything to get you over there, and they would remove all friction to get you to use Zelle in the hopes that you switch away from Venmo. Now, if they have a better, more secure solution that works very well, adding an extra button, are you sure you want to send it to this person? Can you check the amount? These kind of things. I don't think it's no longer going to kneecap them versus what was happening where they're trying to compete against Venmo.
Yeah.
And Zelle does have an interstitial anytime, at least with Chase. I mean, I use it a lot for business, and anytime I try to use it, there's an interstitial there talking through like 6 different types of scams, saying that if someone told you to send money this way, then you should probably pause. And that's good friction there.
I used to say Zelle is fine. It's no worse. On the radio show, people would because there was another finance radio host who used to rail against Zelle, probably for reasons of his own. But people would say, well, you shouldn't use Zelle. I said, well, it's no different than Venmo or PayPal, or frankly, an ATM machine. If you take money out of an ATM machine because somebody walked up to you and said, hey, I can't get home. Can you give me $20 for gas? And you gave them that money, the bank's not liable for that. Why should the bank be liable for that? So I'm not sure I really understand why people think the bank should be liable for a Zelle transaction. But I'm glad that they are at least kind of warning people that don't fall for this and don't fall for that.
I think it's a good reminder, especially large banks, in terms of having this stuff built in, because again, their financial incentives are definitely away from allowing too much fraud or too many scams happening where people lose all trust, because they don't want to lose your trust on Zelle and then you don't want to get a mortgage with them. So
I think what happened is when credit card companies came along, everybody was afraid to use them. So the credit card companies, in order to get you to use credit cards, said, well, don't worry, if there's a fraudulent transaction, we'll back it up. We'll give you your money back. And they had to do that to get people to use plastic. But that's just because they didn't have a choice. I mean, financial institutions don't. So in other words, we got a false sense of security thanks to credit cards.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to back up any purchase when you're charging 18% interest.
Yeah, they can afford to. Exactly. All right. Well, anyway, watch for FedNow coming to a bank near you or not. I bet my bank now. So this is why I brought up Zelle, because I think the banks have already put so much investment into getting Zelle up and running that they don't want to do FedNow. They're like,
I think they're ready to move past Zelle.
Are they?
Everyone
I hope
wants
so.
to move past Zelle.
I hope you're right.
Is it the name of Zelle? Like, what makes Zelle so unattractive?
It's the name. It's the name.
Is it?
I don't know what it is about it, but I think I've said it out loud. I've heard other people say it out loud, and every time, and it almost always naturally comes up in a very social situation. You're at dinner, you're somewhere where you need to send someone money, and you're all talking about it. Somehow Venmo just rolls off the tongue, but Zelle just makes everyone stop for a moment.
That's just
I just walked by
Isn't that funny?
a Wells Fargo, and their money send thing I think is called Fargo, which I think is the best of all the names. Hey, with Fargo. Or Fargo is your your money assistant.
Fargo me, man.
Or Farg you. I'll Farg you. All right, let's take a little break. We're doing a takeover, big technology takeover. We got big technology talk. In fact, let's talk about the FTC, Microsoft, Lina Khan, with our great panelists from the Big Technology Podcast and Substack. You know Alex Kantrowitz. Great to see you, Alex. And Alex brought along his good friend, Ranjan Roy, his co-host, every Friday on the Big Technology Podcast. More to talk about. Farg you. I'll farg me. I'll farg you. We'll talk about that in just a second. But first.
Oh, Jesus.
And you thought Zelle was a bad name.
It is.
Our show today brought to you by, and they're sure happy about it, NetSuite. If your business earns millions or tens of millions in revenue, stop what you're doing and listen, because NetSuite from Oracle has just rolled out the best offer we have ever seen. NetSuite gives you the visibility, we've talked about it before, and control you need to make better decisions faster. Ben Argov, who's the CEO of International Wine Accessories, gave us this quote: "We've improved efficiency, enabled remote sales, and customer service. We provide a higher level of service to our customers and manage based on real-time data by having all of our operations centralized, hosted, and accessible in the cloud." For the first time in NetSuite's 25 years as the #1 cloud financial system, you can defer payments of a full NetSuite implementation for 6 months. 6 months, no payment, no interest. You can take advantage of this special financing offer right now. NetSuite is #1 because they give your business everything you need in real time, all in one place, to reduce manual processes, to boost efficiency, to build forecasts, to increase productivity across every department. Having the power of all your information in one place so you can make better decisions is an incomparable value. Don't let this phenomenal offer from NetSuite pass you by. If you think about it, a single source of truth, a single source of information, all in one place with graphs, with information that you need, is what it takes to make better business decisions. No wonder more than 36,000 companies have already upgraded to NetSuite, gaining visibility and control over their financials, their inventory, their HR, their e-commerce, and more. For businesses of any size, NetSuite is just the right way to do it. If you've been sizing NetSuite up to make the switch, then you know this is an unusually good deal. It's unprecedented. No interest, no payments for 6 months. Take advantage of this special offer at netsuite.com/twit. NetSuite, NetSuite, netsuite.com/twit. Get the visibility and control you need to weather any storm. Now more than ever, you need this. 6 months, no interest, no payments. What a great special financing offer from NetSuite at netsuite.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Tech. It's been really fun watching the Microsoft acquisition go up and down and left and right. A $69.7 billion deal. Only now 2 people in the way of this acquisition. The UK Competition Authority, who's worried about cloud gaming, and the FTC. And now it looks like the FTC is stepping back. It started with a injunction. The FTC asked the courts to say, hey, we're investigating this acquisition. Can you issue a temporary restraining order so they cannot get together? The judge took testimony from everybody, from Satya Nadella, from Sony, from everybody, and said, guys, there's no reason for this injunction. I'm not going to agree to it. I'm not going to bar it. Microsoft said, all right, then we're going to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, who within seconds said, no, we're not going to stop it either. Microsoft and Activision have they had a deadline of July, I think it was the 18th. That was the trigger for the breakup fee. They agreed, no, this is going to happen, but we're going to extend this till October. It can't be very far off at this point, except for this little, speed bump that we call the United Kingdom. You guys have any thoughts on this? I guess the first question I would ask, is it problematic? It's a big merger. You don't see many $69 billion mergers in the world. Clearly, two big companies getting together. Is that by itself enough to worry? You talk a lot, Alex, about financialization of tech.
Let's turn it back on to you. You're a gamer, right? So the main concern here is that Microsoft buys Activision, then big Activision games like Call of Duty are only going to be available on the Xbox. Now, they've signed some 10-year deals to say, okay, it's going to be available on other platforms like the PlayStation. But isn't that the inevitable end here, which is that you get platform exclusivity, and that's bad for all gamers because the price goes up on Xbox and you can't use it if you have a PlayStation?
I guess it depends on if you believe Microsoft. Because Microsoft has said, no. In fact, you're right. They've offered a 10-year deal, which they offered in 2021, and Sony finally signed it after this latest setback. Non-exclusivity, they're going to continue to offer it. Microsoft says, why would we not offer it on PlayStation? We want to make money on Call of Duty, and we lose money on Xbox. We're not going to save Xbox with exclusives. Really, if you think about it, if you're a gamer, you know that Sony is far worse on exclusives than Microsoft is. Far more likely to use exclusives to prop up the game platform, and it's worked for them. I kind of believe Microsoft does not care as much about the Xbox business as selling software everywhere. In fact, that's the new Microsoft. That's the new Satya Nadella. Is we want to sell products to everybody on every platform. So I believe them on that. But on the other hand, I also get nervous when I see giant companies merging, because in the long run, that seems to me bad for gamers or bad for anybody who uses their products. The bigger the company, the more chances they have to monopolize. Yes?
I think being nervous is correct, because to me, the most interesting part of this FTC lawsuit was, and it was one of the first times where they really were betting on, and they ended up losing on, the idea of not just looking at the current state of market power, but also where is that market going. And I know cloud gaming has kind of almost been laughed off because of its size right now, but I think it's instructive if you think about in 10 years, what's going to be dominant, cloud gaming or console gaming? If I were to bet, I would bet on cloud gaming. If you start to think about how does every cloud service work, like especially a cloud entertainment service right now, look at Netflix, Amazon Prime Video. How do they all get subscribers? Exclusives. So to me, it's almost inevitable that for whatever they say right now about a 10-year deal, and of course we want console gaming and it's better for us to sell the actual individual units, we all know where the market is going, and it's going to be cloud gaming, and we know how cloud entertainment services work. So to me, this is it's actually a reminder of how hard antitrust enforcement is right now, because it's never been done before where, like, courts are really ruling on where the market is going and trying to make a prediction about that. But it's pretty clear that any kind of market power that's going to be accumulated, and again, Xbox gaming, Microsoft, imagining how they can tie that back in other ways to entertainment, to software, it's just another thing that they will definitely own. And I think Sony in the long run on that. And I think it was you guys talked about it here last week. Sony has been great so far at licensing the IP of its games into movies and other franchises where, Activision has not been yet. That's definitely another place where leveraging the overall Microsoft ecosystem, I think, will be very, very strong for them.
And monopolies are good businesses at the end of the day. So
yes, that's why we have to stop
one. Right, but I'm saying you asked about what's going to happen.
Is
with
it good for business or good for the consumer?
No, it's good for the business that has it.
Right.
And so when you ask about like, what do we think about this deal? That's like sort of like, well, is Microsoft going to play by the rules? I mean, look, if you ask me, if you have the opportunity to do a monopoly, you do it. If the government has allowed you to do it, then you do it.
Yeah.
I would love to see a banker pitch deck versus what they say in an antitrust lawsuit court. On one side, in the courtroom, this isn't going to help our business at all. It's actually not a great deal. What? And then, obviously, I can only imagine.
That's kind of what Microsoft said. Microsoft was at great pains to say, this will only make us the number 3 gaming company in the world, or the number 3 console company in the world after PlayStation and Nintendo. Microsoft said, we just want to have a position in mobile gaming, which they don't. And that's what we get with Activision. Part of the problem is that, at least in the U.S., our antitrust law is really out of date. And I think that's one of the things the FTC under Lina Khan has been trying to do, and some parts of Congress have been trying to do, is to update our antitrust law to be more relevant to modern times and to protect consumers more. Right?
To me, sorry.
No, don't, please.
To me, this is a reminder that the outdated antitrust certainly is a huge problem here. And there's been a lot of debate, should Lina Khan and the FTC taken on these lawsuits? Like she was asked in Congress, are you taking on lawsuits that you think you can win? To me, I still think these actions need to be taken because we're at least talking about it right now.
What was your answer to that, by the way?
They do believe that they will not pursue a lawsuit that they do not think they can win.
Okay.
But to me, actually, I mean, even if that's what she's saying, I think there's value in them taking on the biggest players. It's a $70 billion transaction that has huge implications for the industry. So versus, for the past decade, the FTC either went after small and mid-sized companies or took small actions on big tech companies. Meanwhile, big tech, concentrated power to an unbelievable degree. So I actually am still very much on the side of taking these kind of actions. Obviously, there's certainly endless blowback for any losses that I think, is definitely tough to overcome, but I still think it's the right thing to do.
Ever since Ronald Reagan, the United States has really not enforced antitrust law. It was Reagan era economics that said, no, big is good. We don't want to get in the way of big business. And ever since, the FTC has been a revolving door for corporate lawyers and lobbyists, has really not fought trusts. And I think if you talk about big tech, you have to talk about it in this context. It's been allowed to become big because we haven't had really effective antitrust law since the 80s.
That's right. Well, you have the regulator that's underfunded. So anyone who's worked inside the FTC makes clear that they just don't have enough resources. I mean, think about this. You're going up against Microsoft, $1 trillion company, trying to close a $70 billion acquisition. Your budget is like $300 million a year for everything that you're
pretty
doing.
hard.
$500 million. They recently increased it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a company that's meant to regulate Facebook. Your annual budget is what Facebook makes in an afternoon. So, and this is what you're talking about with like the Reaganism stuff, is like after Reagan, yes. And we went through an era where we wanted to keep these regulators feeble. Then Democrats and Republicans all of a sudden came together and they said, well, maybe we should team up on big tech antitrust. So they increased the budget a little bit, but not really enough. And they haven't passed the laws that they've been talking about and bringing all these CEOs in front of their committees for their YouTube moments. They haven't passed anything. So, effectively, you still have big tech in the power position.
Yeah, and really good piece, which I did put the link into the show notes from Cory Doctorow, who's, as you know, a very strong proponent of antitrust regulation. This from the 14th of July. Why they're smearing Lina Khan, and he's talking about publications like the Wall Street Journal, constantly hammering on how many, and Congress too, let's face it, on how many losses she has. 4. She's 0 for 4 in going to court against Meta, now against Microsoft and others. But Cory points out that Khan has also done a lot of good things and is fighting the good fight in a lot of areas. I think everybody listening to the show would agree. For instance, click to cancel, which is most recently the FTC's plan to make it require that it be as easy to cancel a subscription as it is to make the subscription. That's not even debatable, right? It's like just obvious. Of course, it's not the way it is in most cases. And there's and the war on robocalls, I think we all agree that that war is the good fight. It's a good piece. It's strongly worded.
Yes.
I think the word lickspittle is used and so forth, but that's Cory. He's really good at this stuff and very convincing. He says Microsoft has a long history of being a brutal, abusive monopolist. It's a convicted monopolist, and its bad conduct didn't end with the browser wars. You remember how the lockdown turned all our homes into rent-free branch offices for our employees? Microsoft seized on that moment to offer our bosses keystroke and click-level surveillance of our use of our own computers in our own homes via Office 365. That's the Viva product that we've talked about on Windows Weekly. If you think a company that gave your boss a tool to spy on their employees and rank them by productivity as a prelude to firing them or cutting their pay is going to treat gamers or game makers well once they've spent the competition out of business, you're a credulous sucker. And you're going to be so disappointed. The enshittification play, this is Cory's new word, which I love, is obvious. Use investor cash to make things temporarily nice for customers and suppliers. Lock both of them in this case, it's with a subscription-based service similar to Netflix, and then claw that value back until that all that's left is a big pile of poop. Is Cory wrong, or do you agree?
I think that he's talking about the smears of Lina Khan, using his words. I think that there's a lot of criticism of Lina Khan. The one that we don't really hear often enough, and I think this is a fair criticism, is that operationally the FTC isn't working as well as it could. And because of that, we're starting to see the losses in these lawsuits. Now, the FTC usually doesn't bring lawsuits that it doesn't think it can win,
right? Which
I think goes to Ron John's point that they've been going after small and medium companies. Now they're bringing these higher risk lawsuits, but they should still be winning them. And I think that operationally, that organization could be run in a much better way, to the point where it's starting to bring to bear, all of the acumen of its legal teams and all of the capabilities that it has. And it seems like, just organizationally, it's just not working as well as it should be.
Yeah, but this is also where Alex and I have debated this definitely. And I think Cory Doctorow's piece really digs into just how entrenched a lot of the power structures are that, trying to overcome, again, I think it was 31 out of 41 recent FTC officials had worked for the companies that they cover. But even more so, the judge who actually pushed this through, their argumentation was already pretty suspect, and he had quoted Matt Stoller on this around the idea that, the executives essentially said, we will not hold exclusives. Again, it's in our business interest to not hold exclusives. Everyone's going to always get Call of Duty, and then because that the deadline was July 18th, that she felt it was unfair to the companies, and it was, disingenuous of the FTC to try to essentially break that deadline rather than having a full investigation into the potential of the merger itself. So I think already this is such a big merger. It's just on a notional dollar value that it's worth having a full investigation into it. But just as also as a reminder of, how entrenched a lot of these power structures are, it's the judge's son works at Microsoft, not in the games division, so she did not recuse herself. But it's just a reminder of what Lina Khan and the FTC are going up against. So I still keep coming back to not judging them on wins, but rather than judging them on where is the conversation, how is antitrust move forward? And I think, again, thinking about where we are now versus 3 or 4 years ago, no one would have even batted an eyelash on this deal.
But you have to judge on wins because there's ideology and then there's the grounding in the legal facts. And you could say that, they're in a good place ideologically. And I think going after this Microsoft-Activision merger is certainly one of those cases. But if your ideology can't match your legal grasp of the facts, which will give you victories in courts, then ultimately, what are you serving? You're going out there, you're doing these lawsuits, but you're not backing up, trying to make your ideology, the law of the land. And that's the criticism on Khan that I think is legitimate.
But there is the argument that at least pursuing these, whether you win or lose, you're making companies think twice. But you have to pursue them and win, though. That's what I'm saying. Well, even going to trial,
ideology matches.
Even going to trial can be harmful. I think there was stuff in discovery during this that both hurt Microsoft as much as it hurt Sony, and so even going to trial and discovery can be problematic for these companies. And then there's always the risk that they're going to lose. You don't know what the outcome is going to be when you enter into this, even if you think you have a strong case. And so it may cause companies to think twice before. I mean, that's the only argument you can make. I agree. It'd be great if she would win, but probably part of the problem is not so much these are bad cases, but that the antitrust law that's the foundation for these cases does not fit well to the current circumstance.
But then here's the thing. They know the laws. So they should bring cases that they can win under the laws.
I understand. And the FTC has said, a big part of this is getting new laws. The problem is you're not going to get Congress to do anything.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You're not going to get Congress to do anything. So what do you do? Do you continue going after small and medium-sized businesses, or do you take these swings and as they could lose? If not every single one of these things goes right for Microsoft, if they don't come in guns blazing with all their resources at hand, maybe they do lose, or maybe the next merger like this doesn't go through. So I still think, pushing forward on these kind of things. Again, 2 to 3 years ago, the idea of looking at a future market from an antitrust perspective did not exist in anywhere in the conversation. This decision makes us at least think about it, whereas that never happened before.
$70 billion seems like I'm trying to think of any of larger acquisitions. There haven't been many. That's huge.
70 Instagrams.
70 Instagrams. Think of how many Instagrams they could have bought with that money.
But only 1.6 Twitters.
But Twitter was a little overpriced, wasn't it?
Yeah. Twitter's then or Twitter's now?
Twitter's now.
Twitters right now.
Is there a Google search greater than $70 billion acquisitions? I don't know if there is.
I feel it would be like only oil and gas companies or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's giant. If nothing else, it shows you how big the game business is, how valuable it is to Microsoft. I mean, this is more than any other entertainment property, right? It's huge. Let's take a little break.
One of the interesting things.
Go ahead. Hold the thought.
Last thing I'll say is...
Okay. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I've said conflicting things. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to go. One of the interesting things, though, is that, the economy has really shifted since this agreement was inked. Right. And Microsoft is still like, we'll pay the $70 billion. So it just goes to show you how big they think this could be.
Yeah. I think Corey's contention is Microsoft wants to put Sony out of the gaming business. I'm not sure that's the case, but you think so? You think that's their goal ultimately?
Yeah. Look, this is the thing. Look at their market cap, right? Once you go in the $1 trillion range as a company, you need to squeeze all the growth out of every market that you operate in to justify your valuation. Yeah. So it's not like wants or doesn't want. It has to. It has to squeeze Sony out of the game, or else its market cap shrinks, and then the CEO is in hot water.
Okay. See, this is why we had the finance guys on. This is where you get the money show. We've got takeover by Big Tech today. Well, the Big Tech podcast and the Big Technology Substack. It's great to have Alex Kantrowitz here, the host of the Big Technology podcast, his co-host on Fridays, Ranjan Roy. I know nothing about money or finance, so I'm glad to have some actual experts on the show today.
You're running a business, Leo. So
I'm running into the ground. That's not a good.
That's not true.
It's not a good sign. If these are my financial bona fides, I'm in trouble. I'm in deep trouble. Our show today, fortunately, my wife really knows what she's doing. Our show today is brought to you by Mint Mobile. I do love Mint Mobile. And, these days with everything costing more, it's nice to have your cell bill cut in half or less. There's one company giving you a much-needed break, Mint Mobile. It was the first company to sell premium wireless service online only. No stores means big savings for you. They let you order from home, save a ton. Phone plans start at, just before I tell you, think about what, just kind of imagine in your mind your last cell bill. 70, 80, 90, 100, more probably, right? How about $15 a month? All in. $15 a month. That, it, by the way, includes unlimited talk, unlimited text nationwide, plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You choose the plan that matches how much data you need. They just really do it right. Premium wireless for as little as $15 a month. All plans are, I'll be telling you the truth, the secret, running on the T-Mobile network. So if you've got great T-Mobile service where you are, you'd be crazy to be paying T-Mobile prices when you can get it for $15 a month. Bring your own phone. They will send you the SIM for free or use eSIM. Many phones support it now. All the phones that Mint Mobile sells themselves support it. So that makes it even easier. I think this is such a good deal. Use your own phone. Get a phone from Mint Mobile. Get $15 a month. Premium wireless service. $15 a month. Look at that. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month, get the plan shipped to your door for free. Mintmobile.com/twit. I love them so much I even have Mint Mobile socks. I'm not kidding. Mintmobile.com/twit. Cut your wireless bill. I must say it one more time because it doesn't sound believable, but it's absolutely true. To $15 a month. Just go to mintmobile.com/twit to see. It's pretty much the best deal out there. If you're paying more, the question is why. Mintmobile.com/twit. We thank them so much for supporting our show. Antitrust is coming at Microsoft and other companies, though, from Europe in big time. The guns are firing. Amazon and Apple have now been fined $218 million by the Spanish antitrust watchdog. Now, this is saying that they colluded. I'm not sure I agree with this one, but they colluded to limit the online sale of Apple devices in Spain. Apparently, when Amazon and Apple made a deal for Amazon to sell Apple phones from Apple on Amazon, they agreed not to allow third parties to sell those same phones. More than 90% of the existing retailers who were using Amazon's marketplace to sell Apple devices were blocked as a result. Apple's device cost the prices of Apple's devices sold online went up as a result. Amazon says, we reject the suggestion that Amazon benefits from excluding sellers from its marketplace. Our business model, Your Honor, our business model hinges precisely on the success of the companies selling through Amazon. I think, Alex, you might have covered this in Always Day One. Amazon does these deals, don't they?
Yeah, this is part of the business, and I also don't really think that they care about the fine from Spain. I mean, a couple $100 million to them is it's a drop in the bucket ultimately, and they can put their legal team on it and fight it and come to a settlement that's half or a quarter of that and continue to move on. And by the way, I also want to apologize to your listeners. I said that Microsoft was around $1 trillion. It's actually, I looked it up in the break, $2.5 trillion.
It's amazing.
2.5 times that. So now it definitely needs to squeeze out the market. But I wanted to make that clarification.
But I think this also is such a perfect illustration about what Alex was saying around how you have to just squeeze whatever you can. Because again, let's think through the actual dynamics of this. Amazon, clearly iPhones being sold on their platform is a good thing overall globally for the business. Apple willing to go on the business, but doesn't want third parties to sell them. They want to sell them under the Apple name. A little deal is done. And, globally, that's potentially a huge business for both Amazon and it's good for Apple. But obviously within that limits consumer choice, and a country like Spain seems to be going after this. The fact that they would even make that deal for the Spanish market and almost, I don't want to say waste their time, but something that small in their larger business is a reminder that, the dynamics are set up internally where they are trained to squeeze every market for whatever they can. And this is also a reminder, again, like these are the things where we're actually seeing results and wins in antitrust around the world. And we're almost all laughing it off. And I am kind of laughing it off. Again, $200 million. It's an FTC budget, but it's a drop in the hat for them. So I think this case actually exemplifies a lot about how big tech competitive dynamics work around the world.
Just wait until Spain finds out how much Google's paying Apple to be the default search on the iPhone.
What is that? The estimate I saw last time was $11 billion a year. I think it's gone up from that.
It's got to be more than that.
Yeah, it's a big part of Apple's services revenue is money, a check from Google. Now it's instantaneous thanks to FedNow, by the way. Apple says that, we're just trying to keep counterfeits off of the Spanish Amazon. But really, they're just trying to keep third-party sellers from selling iPhones. Apple's always done that. They want to completely control the channel. That way they control prices. Yeah, it's good for their business. And maybe it's good for consumers. At least if you're buying an iPhone on Amazon, it's legit, right?
They just decided that they want to, care about counterfeits the moment that Apple came in with an exclusive deal for them. They're like, we don't need to sell counterfeits anymore.
It's a good deal. It's a profit deal. I get it now.
But think about it, again, it's within the EU. Apple, the right to repair, it's a lot more aggressive. So Apple has to let you actually repair your device. You crack your screen, you don't void your warranty if you go actually get your screen repaired. But to me, my favorite and the one I'm most excited about and the realization of good policy is if the next iPhone will have a USB-C, at least in Europe, because they have to, and they have to have single chargers, and I can finally get rid of my lightning cables, because the day that happens, I will just,
let me channel
policy meets.
Let me channel Apple fanboys though, because we got a few of them on our show, Mac Break Weekly. That is the EU dictating technology to a technology company. These guys are not technologists. They shouldn't be dictating what happens when the next thing comes along and everybody's stuck with Type-C because the EU said you have to use it.
Yeah, but then don't make my iPad Pro USB-C. Keep it Lightning. I'm an Apple fanboy through
He's
and
right.
through.
He's totally right.
I'm an Apple fanboy, but just let me carry only one or two cables max.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah. I've been walking around with a broken iPhone 10 for about a year waiting for that USB-C 15. If the iPhone 15 comes out and there's no USB-C, I'm going Android. That's ridiculous at this point.
Pixel time.
Yeah.
Pixel Pro.
Yeah. No, I think you're going to win. I think we're going to see USB-C quickly, and it's the right
Thanks
thing.
to the EU. Thanks to the EU.
Yeah, and also maybe it would have happened anyway, because as you pointed out, they've already done it with every other device of theirs is Type-C now.
But now you're going to have to charge AirPods with the same lightning cable. Just do.
My AirPods wireless charging works. The one device where
that's true.
It actually does
That's
the
a good
job.
point. It does have wireless.
My iPhone takes like 2 days, but.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I agree with you. I'm not one of those Apple fanboys who thinks the EU is doing the wrong thing. I think we need that. Let's see. Well, speaking of Apple, kind of a victory for Apple. Remember the Apple Epic lawsuit, which Epic lost in almost every regard. There was the one thing the court said is that Apple should open up to third-party app stores. And in particular, one of the things Apple really didn't like was the requirement that they undo their anti-steering rules. This is a rule that Apple imposes on anybody who offers an app on the iPhone, on Apple platforms. They can't, for instance, let's use Amazon's Kindle app. Now, you and I know that you cannot, on an iPhone, buy a book in the Kindle app. But the Kindle app is not allowed to put a link to the Amazon web store where you could buy it, because Apple doesn't want you to do that. They want the 30%. Amazon's response is, well, we're going to turn off buying in the Kindle store, and people just will have to figure out they buy it on the Amazon store and then it appears in their Kindle. It's a problem for Spotify. It's a problem for anybody that has in-app purchases. 30% goes to Apple. On Monday, Apple was granted a motion putting on hold the appeals court ruling that would push its anti-steering rules out and let outside developers link to a third-party payment mechanism. The appeals court stayed it for 90 days to give Apple time to appeal to the Supreme Court. District Court found that Apple had not generally violated antitrust law with its walled garden approach to iOS, but did order it to drop rules against letting developers include calls to action for outside payment methods. Now they've given them an extra 90 days to petition that with the Supreme Court. And of course, once the petition's filed, it's automatically stayed until the Supreme Court rules. So Apple's going to have some time, it looks like. Unless the Supreme Court immediately says, screw it, get out of here, go away, and then they're going to have to do it. Why is Apple fighting this so hard? It's how hard could it be to say, all right, fine, put a link to the Kindle store?
Well, they really want... Oh, go ahead, Ron John.
They want their 30%. That's what they want.
It changes everything, because I think there was a long period of time where Apple was able to sell the idea that security, predictability, that the App Store brought something really specific. But now we're at a point that, again, buying a book on a Kindle, why does it need to be so difficult? Once you're trained to know to go out and go to the website and buy the book, then go back to your Kindle, you start to figure it out. But maybe this one's going to hit hard, because every Supreme Court justice has a Kindle and has not figured out how to buy a book on their iPad or iPhone. So maybe it'll hit. But I think it's just a reminder that if they give an inch, they're worried about the overall App Store tax.
And it just goes to show you, they've been so adamant that the reason why you have to go through Apple's in-app payments is because they're protecting you against counterfeiters and or fraud or whatever it is. And this whole idea of letting Spotify say, you can't subscribe here, but if you want to subscribe, go to Spotify.com. They have such a problem with that. It does go to show you that it really is about the 30% that they're going to make.
Yeah.
Credit cards, they're intermediaries or their service, they charge 3%. That's a normal transaction fee. For the transaction fee on the Apple Store to be 30%, that something's wrong. And that actually, going back to our theme, that is what, antitrust should be addressing. And instead we have courts saying, yeah, go, keep doing this. Do you think consumers from figuring out where they can go to actually buy the services? So
do you think the FTC should take on the 30% tax? Think they can win?
By the way, my whole point in this has not been the FTC shouldn't take these things on. It's that the FTC should be less grounded in the ideology and more grounded in the legal facts when they come out to these cases. And just like their track record shows that they haven't been.
They should treat it like a prosecutor, like a prosecutor does, where a prosecutor assesses the likelihood of winning the case before actually pursuing the case,
or deciding what type of case to bring based off of the law.
Right.
Yeah, but I think the difference here is a prosecutor is not being mindful of how they are shaping the law overall. right? Prosecutor prosecuting an individual case is just thinking about that individual case. They're not thinking about how do I shape the entire economy and rule of law going forward.
Yeah, so I'll concede that we don't have good enough antitrust law to actually come in and bring this stuff. And if Congress decided that it wanted to act, maybe we could change that, but it hasn't decided that. So we're left with this. But that being said, I don't think that's a blanket excuse for all these losses.
The Ninth Circuit judge, however, even though they did grant the 90-day stay to Apple, was not at all happy about Apple's arguments. Judge Milan D. Smith writes, while the arguments in Apple's motion may not be technically frivolous, they ignore key aspects of the panel's reasoning and key factual findings by the district court. Remember, Apple won everything except this in district court. Apple appealed to the Ninth Circuit. Ninth Circuit also upheld the ruling, but subsequently has granted them 90 days to appeal. Apple ignores the key aspects of the panel's reasoning and key factual findings by the district court. When our reasoning and the district court's findings are considered, Apple's arguments cannot withstand even the slightest scrutiny. Apple's standing and scope of the injunction argument simply masquerade its disagreement with the district court's findings and objection to state law liability as contentions of legal error. Apple's arguments cannot withstand even the slightest scrutiny. So he spanked Apple even while giving them the 90 days to appeal it to the Supreme Court. I guess he felt like he had to give them that.
I am so curious if this goes to the Supreme Court, who leans in which direction, because I feel the fascinating these cases break down any normal interpretation of or conventional interpretation of left and right. There's so many nuances, what's in support of business or free markets, or I don't know. This will be an interesting
I think it's unpredictable, but I do think Tim Cook should invite Clarence Thomas and Justice Roberts on his yacht and take them for a little ride. Just, press the flesh, greet, talk to him. Let them see his side. You know what I'm saying? No,
assuming that hasn't already happened.
Yeah, I know. What can he do? Does
Clarence Thomas is on the phone with Apple HQ, being like, "Hey, so what type of trips can we take?"
Early access to the Vision Pro.
That's it.
That's right. They want augmented virtual reality.
Chief Justice, perhaps you would like a tour of our Vision Pro and its fine capabilities.
It's amazing. It's a computer on your face. Give us all the rulings in our favor, please.
I don't know how the Supreme. I don't think you have any indicator of how the Supreme Court might rule on this. It's just going to be, catch as catch can. We'll see what happens. You were excited, I think, Ranjan, about Meta and Microsoft introducing llamas into the world. We talk a lot about artificial intelligence. We haven't talked a whole lot about this. LLaMA is the large language model Meta has been working on, and the next generation is LLaMA 2. Of course, you notice Microsoft got in there real quick. Microsoft wants to make sure if it's AI that Microsoft is there. I saw one headline saying Meta opens up LLaMA to everybody except the corporations that might compete directly with its business model.
Okay. I think but this is really, really interesting, because having done a good amount of work with generative AI for a while, I've been realizing that, again, only working with the largest models or the most expensive models or directly with OpenAI, you can get very, very good results for solving very specific problems with much smaller models, open source models. So I think it's very smart Meta coming in late to the game here. They probably are not going to build some large API-driven business like OpenAI is doing, like Google is hoping to do. So I think this was the smartest play that they could make. And again, we've seen that Meta has been well ahead from the technology perspective. Jan LeCun has driven a lot of this research and has been on the Big Technology podcast, I believe, a number of times. I think this is very interesting. It is funny to me, as you said, the fact that Microsoft had to get into this press release, because all they're doing is saying it's compatible on the Azure ecosystem.
It'll work on Azure, right?
Like, yes, of course. Like, it'll also work on Google Cloud, I'm sure.
AWS, yes.
AWS.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
It's a standard open source model. You can go on Hugging Face and pull 100 other ones. So, like, I was very intrigued by the communications element of how that came together.
Do you think Microsoft
overall,
gave them some Azure credits? Because generating these models is very expensive. That maybe that's what Microsoft did, is say, well, here, we're going to help you out here.
To Meta's research department, maybe?
Although Meta's got the money. I mean, if
Meta's
and the servers.
This isn't some scaling startup.
What does it mean for Microsoft and OpenAI, right? Like, does it change?
Yeah.
Microsoft is huge partners with OpenAI, so that's sort of what surprised me, was to see them head, front and center on the Meta.
Microsoft got something for this. I mean, clearly Microsoft wanted to make sure that you understood that this will work on Azure, right? So what Facebook has done is they have open sourced LLaMA 2, which is their next big large language model, and they're making it available free of charge for research and commercial use. And of course, Satya Nadella says, "Oh yeah, and by the way, this will run in the Azure. It's in the Azure AI model catalog." But then Facebook said, "Yep, but it'll also run on AWS and Hugging Face and elsewhere."
But they didn't mention Google Cloud, so that's like the dark theory here, is that like maybe this is just something that they decided to roll out to kind of mess.
Enemy is my
with
friend.
Google. Now,
okay.
Is that because like Google? This is like one of the big business lines that Google might have, is like, open or charging for their LLMs, and Meta comes in and says, "All right, well, here, you could just have it." Is that what do you guys do? You think that's a legitimate possibility here?
Yeah, because if you think Google could do it integrated across their ecosystem, they have LLMs, they have the cloud infrastructure, they have the business consumer side of everything. So that's an interesting theory.
And the restriction is that you can't. If you have more than any products with more than 700 million users, you have to ask Meta for permission to use this, and it's not so open anymore. So it's like, well, who does that? who also is included in that? Let me see. It might be
not
also
Twitter.
Google.
Maybe
exactly.
Google.
Definitely not Twitter.
Not Twitter.
Do you get to count the bots or not?
So you guys know all this. You've interviewed Jan LeCun. What is this thing? This LLaMA 2. What are they giving away?
They're giving away essentially the same infrastructure as a GPT 3.5 or 4, smaller in scope and parameters potentially, but still you can fine tune your own models off of them. These are foundation models that allow any company to do all the work of generative AI that we all want to do. It's just free and open. And as we're talking, I'm thinking,
is this like? So in other words, Facebook has done the hard work of creating these models. That's the hard part, and now you can play with it to create your own
layers on top of it, business processes around it. And the thing is, all these things, there have been tons and tons of other open source models or free models like this. If you go to Hugging Face, there's a whole community built around this.
That's the home of Stable Diffusion. And if you have a Stable Diffusion, I've been running it at my house, you can download different models, right? Different things.
Yeah, it's an entire community of open sourced LLMs and for different purposes, different models. So as we're talking, I'm starting to think like maybe Microsoft also realized, and there's a lot of people who have said this really is an industry and an ecosystem that can move more towards open source. So maybe Microsoft is hedging their bets as well with OpenAI, that, that's their bet on closed and this is their bet on open. And
that's a great point.
They're making sure their Satya is everywhere at the same time.
Well, this was also the week that Microsoft announced that they were going to offer Chat GPT, Bing Chat, whatever they call it, in Microsoft 365, and it would only be $30 per seat per month, which sounds a little expensive to me. But there's definitely a commercial side to what Microsoft's doing with OpenAI.
Well, if you're Google, you use Google Docs, you can get all these things for free. So right now, Google Docs has
are they all the same?
Product.
Is like one a Cadillac and one a Volkswagen? I don't understand.
No, so this is where I think competitively it gets interesting. Alex and I talked about this last Friday. if anyone is a ChatGPT Plus subscriber, I subscribe to it just to try this new code interpreter tool. It's insane. It's like you can upload massive data sets to it of your own, things that would break Excel in an instant. And then you just say, actually, I want to organize the data this way. Can you query what's the average of anything that has, like things you would write complex Excel functions in the past? You can literally watch it creating Python code to actually do that analysis for you, things you would have had a data scientist full-time for before. So I mean, this is one of the coolest things I've seen in this whole generative AI.
Is it good code? Is it usable code?
Yeah. It gets you the right answers, and it works. And it works on, instead of, there's no hallucination. This isn't standard LLM where it's, like working off a giant foundation model and it's not even sure what it's saying. It's just creating Python code that gives you an answer to a data query. But the thing is, again, right now, it's worth me paying $20 a month to OpenAI. Is someone going to come along and do this open source very soon? I think very likely. So I agree with you that I think a lot of this stuff is going to just be the same across, and it's going to be awesome for users and businesses. But how this plays out from a business perspective, I think this is anyone's game, which is maybe why Satya is again everywhere.
So we've used. I'm trying to understand this. We've used a thing called Whisper AI to do transcripts. A friend of mine uses it to transcribe conversations, feeds the transcript into ChatGPT, which generates an action item list based on a recorded conversation. Whisper is using models. It can use different models, right? It could use in theory, it could use LLaMA, right? Is that the idea? Is that's a front end to do, let's say, transcription, or in your case, to do Python code, and it sits on top of a large language model?
Yeah, I mean, depending on, we don't know whatever it was built on. I would say like people who got in early on this mostly were using a GPT-3 or paying OpenAI for the API access, but any service like that can definitely, as of now, maybe it's not completely, but, Google has models like Text Bison, OpenAI has GPT 3.5 and 4, Facebook has now introduced LLaMA for free. All of those things could theoretically be somewhat interchangeable to do that kind of job, especially transcribing, creating action items, summarization. Like you don't necessarily need the 175 billion parameter gigantic model to do this kind of thing.
But you still end up paying Amazon or Microsoft to use it. So it is interesting. It's like, well, big tech is going to win.
You pay them for Azure minutes or cloud minutes.
Yeah. You're still paying a lot for compute.
Oh, okay. So there's still a lot of computing going on using.
Yeah, it's just that the actual code element of how this all works can be open source. So yeah, Alex is right. Big tech wins again.
Yeah, you could, but I could run it if I have a powerful machine.
You can run locally.
Yeah.
Go to call up NVIDIA and get a couple more. Oh, there's another win for.
I need another 54090s. How quickly?
Dang it! We thought we were out of the woods.
Do we know what LLaMA's trained on? Is it trained on the same data that ChatGPT is? Have they said anything about that?
I mean, I'm not sure. I know the models that they proudly said are smaller. I think they have and again, you can try, I think it's like a 5 billion parameter. The biggest one was 70 billion. So these are smaller than GPT-4, GPT 3.5. And then even within those OpenAI models, they have different levels as well. They have like Ada, Babbage, Curie, Da Vinci of different sizes. So in terms of what exactly it's trained on, I'm not sure.
Is a smaller model dumber than a bigger model?
Their contention here is that the advance is that they've been able to train an on-par model with a smaller set of data.
It's a smaller set of data, but it's just as good.
It's been trained only on your Facebook messages, Leo. So,
okay. Well, that's the question. Facebook has access to the entire corpus of Facebook messages. Is that what it's being trained on? No, probably not.
We don't know the full details yet.
We don't know.
Obviously, a lot of the stuff is going to be on open source data sets. But they have
is
access
that the
to
next?
the whole
Is that
newsfeed.
the next front line in AI, in the battle over AI? Is where are you getting this data? We saw that Sarah Silverman, the comic, is suing OpenAI because she says it knows my book. You must have given it my book because it can summarize it. A number of authors are also suing. Is that the next front line of battles? We're just going to see people saying, well, wait a minute, you can't train on copyright data. You have to have a process. Where did this come from is a legitimate question.
Yeah, I think both from a copyright perspective, it gets more interesting because all it takes is one case, and then suddenly trying to understand what a gigantic data set was actually trained on, suddenly that could become a liability instead of just, unending profit. But I also think and again, like I'm almost hopeful or optimistic around this, you start to get more smaller verticalized models that are more geared towards solving specific problems. Again, like a transcription model that's trained on podcasts only could potentially be a lot smaller, more efficient, and do that job better than a gigantic model. So I think if it moves in that direction, I think that's a good thing.
Okay. I obviously have a lot to learn about all of this. By the way, throughout our conversation, I keep checking to see if Twitter has gotten rid of the Bluebird. One thing that has happened is you can now go to x.com and it will redirect you to Twitter. Elon's owned x.com since the days of PayPal. In fact, somebody in our chat room is saying that PayPal, Peter Thiel took over from Elon when Elon tried to rename PayPal to X. So this is a long-standing battle.
How do you get a one-letter domain?
Well, you had to buy it in the very early days, I think. You can't get one now.
Are there any others that are active? I went to tried A.com, B.com, and at least those didn't work. And I was trying to think, is this some kind of ICANN like?
I'm on C.com right now. It's Japan's #1 internet group. So
you can't get it.
All right.
.com. And everyone's been saying on Twitter that now Zuckerberg is going to buy Y.com and name Threads Y, but Y.com can't be reached.
Why not is the question.
Maybe it's because Zuck is in the middle of finalizing that purchase.
Wow. What a world we live in. I swear, it's just fascinating. And that's
so I'm in. It's wild. Like I'm in San Francisco right now, and I just walked by ran by the Twitter headquarters this morning, and saw that Elon has indeed painted the W on the side of the building white.
Can you believe what a nitwit? I mean, that is like the worst, stupidest juvenile joke ever.
It's embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. I lived here for 6.5 years, and to come back and just to see this, it's a disgrace, really.
It's a disgrace, and at the same time, he's not paying rent. So.
They better at least paint that W blue if he's not going to pay for rent on the building. But who am I to say?
He said in his midnight tweets this morning that he was going to chisel the Twitter off the building. They were just going to jackhammer it right off the building.
I'd like to see Elon up there with the harness, scaffolding, and his own little chisel, just taking the.
I could totally see him doing that. Are you kidding? I could totally see him doing that.
Yeah. Do you think we'll ever will we ever know the real story of like what went on with these late night tweets or what he really was thinking?
I think Michael Lewis is going to have to write the book, and I hope he does. Lewis, who of course wrote Moneyball and so many great books about, he wrote about the finance industry, was his first book.
Liar's Poker.
Liar's Poker was such a classic, so good. Mm-hmm. He was
I'm
embedded.
not going to suggest that it was mushrooms. I won't suggest that.
I think it was, though. I think you'd be right. I think you'd be exactly right. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We have a great panel. It is the Big Tech Podcast, the Big Technology Podcast.
Big Technology.
I'm sorry. I keep saying tech.
Yeah.
Why do you care?
Because there's a Big Tech Podcast, and we're big. If you put Big Tech Podcast, then it will come up on the show. So we're Big Technology
Big
Podcast.
Technology. Yeah. Spell it out all the way, baby. The Big Technology Podcast and Substack. Alex Kantrowitz, it's great to have you. Ron John, it's great to meet you and have you, Ron John Roy, his Friday co-host on the show. And man, the interviews they get, as you heard, they've talked to Jan LeCun several times. It's just fantastic. You're just knocking it out of the park. We're glad to have you on here. Our show today brought to you by Collide. Speaking of knocking it out of the park, Collide is the thing you need, a device trust solution if you're using Okta. Okta's great for authentication, but Okta needs Collide because Collide ensures that if a device isn't trusted and secure, it can't log into your cloud apps. It's not enough just to have authentication. You need to know that that person is not bringing a payload in with them. If you work in security or IT and you use Okta, this message is for you. There's one thing in common in all the big data breaches and hacks we've been reading about over the last few years. It's the employees. Now, I'm not knocking the employees, but it's often, that's the way the bad guys get in. Sometimes an employee's device gets hacked because maybe of unpatched software. They've got, I don't know, a copy of the Plex server that hasn't been patched in 3 years on their laptop. And then, lo and behold, somebody uses that to steal their AWS credentials, and it's a huge cost in reputation and money to your company. Maybe sometimes an employee would leave, sensitive data in an unsecured place, the SSH private keys in the download folder, maybe. And then, of course, it's practically every day a hacker breaks in using credentials phished from an employee. Now, the problem isn't your end users. The problem is those solutions that you're using that are supposed to prevent all of this. They're not. But it doesn't have to be this way. Imagine a world, just imagine this, where only secure devices can access your cloud apps. In this world, phished credentials useless to hackers. And you can manage every OS, Windows, Macs, even Linux, all from a single dashboard. In this world, this is heaven. You can get employees to fix their own device security issues without creating more for your IT team. Good news, you don't have to imagine it. Just start using Collide. Kolide. Collide.com/twit. Book an on-demand demo today. See how it works for yourself. This is just a must for any company that uses Okta. It's the second piece of the authentication. Kolide. Collide.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Tech. We continue on. Let's see, we were talking about everything, right? We can talk a little bit about self-driving vehicles. You just took a ride in a Waymo, Alex. Welcome to San Francisco. There's nobody driving your car. How'd you like it?
Unbelievable.
How'd you like it?
It was just so cool. I mean,
you weren't nervous at all?
I was nervous for like the first 10 seconds, but it drives so smoothly. And like you just like sit in the back seat and literally in the front seat, there's no driver and the steering wheel is moving you around San Francisco. And I just think that like this is much closer than a lot of people believe. Like there was this moment in 2017 where folks were saying, okay, we're going to get to self-driving next year, and it didn't happen. So people just wrote it off for like the last 5 years. They're like, it was supposed to be here, it's not here. Well, in the background, these companies have been progressing pretty impressively. And having sat down in the car, you see Waymos all over San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
It's just an unbelievable
and
experience.
Cruises, and GM's Cruises as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm definitely going to get in a cruise before I'm here. And by the way, for listeners, I have David Risher, the CEO of Lyft, coming on the show in the next couple weeks. So stand out for that. Tune in for that because we're going to talk about self-driving also. But this is going to be a huge thing. It's going to be a new pillar in terms of the way that we get around. It's going to be rolled out. The thing about technology is you can roll out faster and scale faster than the human mind can conceive, and it's going to roll out in a bunch of different cities. I'm fairly certain, and we're going to have a serious problem when it comes to labor, because if this thing continues on its trajectory, then drivers and places like Uber and Lyft and traditional taxi services, and then maybe even trucking are going to have to start dealing with this as a threat to their jobs. I mean, it is extremely impressive the way that this thing operates. And I'm going to spend the rest of my time here riding in these things because it's just unbelievable.
Wow. All right. So I've heard somebody told me it drives like a grandma.
Yeah, but what?
Which is good.
Grandmas drive. How many grandmas get in trouble for DUI or reckless driving?
I drive like a grandma, so it's okay. It's just like driving with me.
I mean, shout out to the grandma drivers. And if this thing can approximate that, then we're going to have, we were looking up how many deaths are there. There are 13,000 deaths, alcohol related, from driving in the United States every year. And then think about all the people who get DUIs, right? Whose lives can be meaningfully altered because of this. And if we turn driving over to the robots, that's tens of thousands of lives saved, or 10,000 lives saved in just one country in a year, and many thousands more impacted. So I celebrate this. I think that, we'll have to deal with the labor stuff. That's a really important issue. But if we can move to robotic cars, I think it's a great advance for humanity and our civilization.
Wait, but I think you'd made the point that it will scale like technology, which is greater than the human mind can fathom. But will it scale like technology? Because again, this isn't software. This isn't bits. It's atoms. Like it's, I think, like what has impeded it from scaling to date, I think is an important question. Because even for me, like my Honda assisted driving mode on the highway essentially self-drives like for a while. I think this technology has been there for a long time. Do you think, to me, it's one of those questions where to scale it, there has to be some kind of public utility and trust around it. There has to be some kind of accepted regulatory, approach to it. Everyone has to be on board. We have to start building highways around the technology, which at least the way the industry has gone so far has not been the case.
I just think that a lot of these concerns are going to fall by the wayside once more people get inside these vehicles and experience this.
It made you a believer.
Absolutely. And I was I wasn't even a skeptic or I wasn't a believer beforehand. I was just like, all right, that's never going to happen. And then just being
that was me.
The thing.
That's me still.
Yeah.
You're convinced.
You're convinced me.
I'll be curious because when you talk to the Lyft CEO, because really Lyft and Uber were founded on the premise that we wouldn't. It's not a sustainable business if you have to pay humans to drive the cars. It's founded on the premise that we will eventually all be self-driving.
Exactly. So we did talk about that. It's going to be his first podcast interview since taking over Lyft, David Risher.
Good.
So folks should look out for that coming out in a couple weeks.
Okay. I think the reason people were willing to watch Uber rack up huge losses year after year is that there was this premise that at some point this would be financially viable, but it's just taken longer than anybody thought.
Yeah. So I think I think we're at an inflection point here, watching the way. San Francisco is not exactly an easy city to drive in.
And there have been a lot of stories about Cruise, and more Cruise than Waymo, but about Cruise vehicles, blocking intersections, blocking emergency vehicles, getting lost. There was one street in San Francisco where there was just a constant parade of self-driving vehicles coming down, making a U-turn and coming back because they refused to turn, make an illegal left turn. Normal drivers would just go, yeah, right, I'm not going, and would make the left turn, but the car would continue. So I can't turn there. I need to turn there. So I'm going to go down the cul-de-sac, make a U-turn in the cul-de-sac, and make a right turn. They obeyed the law, but it was hell for the cul-de-sac people. They weren't happy.
The one that I was in was also just like, no, not making that turn, too risky, and it dropped me off a little bit further away from my destination.
Interesting.
Or just kind of an aborted mission in terms of the turn it needed to make.
But not the end of the world. You were able to walk to your local.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think that point you make around a normal driver would take that left, but they're playing by the rules. I think. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a reminder though that we need, and I am very hopeful and optimistic around the technology. I hate driving. I hope I can just sit in a 4-hour car ride and do whatever I want rather than have to actually pay attention. That's the dream. But, I think the more productive car companies can be in terms of actually engaging in how we build our roads and stuff, I think it's going to be really important to make sure this technology actually does scale. And I actually think, not to bring it back to Elon again, but I think it's better the fact that the Waymos and the Cruise and eventually Ford and GM and everyone, as they're driving this technology as well, they're going to engage with regulators and highway safety and make sure this stuff is done properly rather than trying to kind of, blow through everything and fight against everyone. So I'm hopeful, and I hope it comes fast.
It will. It definitely will.
if robots can play ping pong, it's just a matter of time.
I have seen those robot ping pong. There's no joy in the game.
There's no joy. They don't enjoy what they're doing.
They do not.
Destroying human beings.
They're loving it.
I hope to God they don't enjoy it. I would hate to see. I think this is fake. I'm sure this is fake.
I've seen that in person. Not the robots. What human?
No, the other ones. They were just a machine. Yeah. No, I've seen those.
It's like it just goes to show you there's some things that robots should do and some things that robots shouldn't. I guess it's just proving it's proving its ability to do stuff, but like give it the joyless stuff.
How do you feel about it writing articles? Vox Media, the CEO of Geo Media, which owns Gizmodo and The Onion and Jezebel, says get ready because more and more of our articles are going to be written by AI. It's absolutely, Merrill Brown says, it's absolutely a thing we want to do more of. Merrill Brown is the editorial director at Geo. Can Geo write a humorous article in The Onion? Yeah.
Like, let's wait until they can write a funny Onion article with automation before we imagine this is going to be anything besides like the least quality stories and listicles. It's not going to be, people aren't going to read publications because there's good AI. It might fill in some of the gaps in some ways, but it's not going to be able to do any of the differentiated writing. So for the writers that are on staff, if you can't do better than the undifferentiated AI, there are bigger questions you need to be asking besides AI's ability to take your work.
It takes away the grunt work articles, the listicles, the things that really this is what CNET said, what Connie Guglielmo said when she was on our show, is that nobody wants to write those articles, and that's the grunt work, and it can do those just fine.
And that's the perfect representation of where it should or could work well, is the idea that the grunt work, the repetitive stuff, the stuff you don't really want to do but potentially does need to get done, it does that for you, and then you have more time to actually write differentiated content. Because again, remember, generative AI, everything is about taking what's already out there. So if you're writing something completely original, you will not be replaced. So I'm still bullish on the idea that can do the grunt work, but I actually think the bigger implication for the media business is when everyone can write that repetitive listicle article in near instantaneous real time, like that actually changes the economics of how those businesses worked before. And again, like it's writing an SEO friendly listicle might have brought in some ad dollars in the past, but if anyone can throw up a media site and get that traffic and create that same article, I think then it does pose a bigger challenge to media companies.
Do you think that the Writers Guild and the actors struck at the wrong moment, that this is the moment the studios are going to step up and say, good, well, guess who we got to replace you? AI. Or is it not there yet?
I think it's not there in almost all use cases.
So this would be like the last moment that the writers and SAG could go on strike. Is we better do it now because in a few years our livelihoods will be threatened.
Yes, that's the other side of it. So like it's not going to take away like any actors' jobs right now, but there are some precedent-setting moments where they can really make a difference here. So for instance, there's a line in this proposed contract that allows background performers. So not like, the Tom Cruises of the world, but like the folks who are in the background of
extras
of a show. Yeah, extras, or even maybe someone with like one line. I don't fully know what the definition is, but something in that realm. They can get like scanned and processed and like then get paid a one-time fee, and the studios can use their likeness in perpetuity if they'd like. So, I think that is, one place where this, you could start to have your fight. But then again, like we've also had CGI extras, for a long time now. So it seems to me like this is really about some other stuff, and they're using this as like a rallying cry for their members. And by all means, go ahead and do it. But like, I don't think that we're going to be in a position where we're going to have AI actors start to create leading entertainment And again, if you're an actor and you can't do better than an AI, then it's time to ask some bigger questions than whether an AI can replace you.
Yeah, and I think using AI as kind of the like central theme or talking point from like the PR side of the entire strike has been smart. I think like it makes it much more targeted rather than an entire business model is broken and talking about the earnings of Disney and like, losses on streaming services and the changing nature of a broken business model. I think talking about they're going to try to steal when Alex says that line, you're going to remember it. We all remember it. The idea that they're going to scan me and then use my likeness in perpetuity for a day's pay. No one anywhere is going to feel good about that. I actually can't believe they put that into any kind of negotiation, because someone somewhere should have told someone to not do that. But I think still, especially visual, especially acting, I think we're a long ways away from anything being like severely affected by AI.
The Biden administration has announced, for a long time, the knock on Silicon Valley was a startup would ship the T-shirt and then start working on the project, the product. The Biden administration has shipped the T-shirt. There's a new cybersecurity label, the Cyber Trust Mark, that would establish that some IoT device you're about to buy has satisfied certain requirements from the Cyber Trust Mark program and has earned the Cyber Trust Mark. Of course, we just don't know what those requirements are, and they really haven't said yet. I think it's a great idea. They're talking about privacy as well as security. One of the requirements would be that the IoT device can be updated over the air so that you can, there are a lot of IoT devices that have security flaws that cannot be patched these days, for instance.
Doesn't it seem like, sorry, go ahead.
The Cyber Trust Mark will signify the devices bearing it meets security standards based on those established in a report by the National Institutes of Standard and Technology, expected to be 2024, labeled hitting devices soon thereafter. This is the NIST's profile of the IoT core baseline for consumer IoT products that they're talking about. I think this is a great idea. Just, it's more than a year off at this point. Go ahead.
Also seems like something that was hatched by industry to make the incumbents sell more refrigerators.
To calm down. Well, that's what they did with the EPA logo, right? And when you buy a refrigerator nowadays, it's got a big EPA rating on it as to its energy efficiency. But that's a good thing, right?
I think it's a good thing. I just would say that these programs tend to be either A, written by the industry players that will tend to benefit the most by them. That's typically what happens.
Right.
Or B, they find a way to use these terms or use these labels to find companies that don't necessarily meet all the standards or don't really fit the spirit of the program, end up getting like the gold standard of them. Like ESG, for instance, has been one of these type of labels that's actually been manipulated by industry incumbents, where like you now have oil companies, they are ESG companies, because they find a way to wiggle into these terminology. I just think that like putting this official government stamp on it, as opposed to having the companies try to market it themselves and like actually win on the merits is an issue.
ESG, environmental, what is it? Environmentals?
Social governance. Social governance. 3 different things.
So it's running a company in a responsible way, basically environmentally and socially. Yes?
And having good governance.
And having good governance. Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, we went on a tour of a power plant, the Narragansett power plant, which was run probably on coal back in the days. And I know it was because it had big scrubbers on the stacks that every month would dump soot on my windowsill when they blew out the scrubbers. And it had all over the plant. And this is in the 60s. It had, environmental slogans. I can't remember what the slogan of the time was, kind of Earth Day period, where, don't pollute, be good, green. I think green maybe everywhere. And I asked my teacher, that's interesting because this is a coal-fired power plant that's pumping soot onto my windowsill. What's the deal with the green? He said, if you post this everywhere and you post it enough, people will become immune to it, and then you won't have to worry about actually doing it.
Well, do you know who came up with this one still always fascinates me, who came up with the concept of a personal carbon footprint, the idea that you need to think about your own emissions?
Who?
British Petroleum.
BP.
I think it was like it was a marketing campaign, and it was and it's one of those that like every time I worry,
it's not us. We're not the problem. You're the problem.
but it's brilliant. It's because the more complex you make it, and the more difficult to understand, it's brilliant on their side. But on the IoT side, as someone, do you use any smart home?
I do. I have a doorbell, and I have every room has an Echo and a Google and a Siri in there, and listening to every word I say. And we have some Hue lights, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And how easy or difficult was it to get that stuff?
Murder.
It's murder, right?
It's murder.
I obsess. I'm a little obsessed with this stuff and blinds that go up and down in every room. And I switched over to the HomePod and the entire kind of Apple HomeKit infrastructure. It's murder. And what's compatible with what is, you never know. Half the stuff doesn't work, or you have to like try to, even the setup is murder. But this is one area where the whole entire IoT industry with the Matter protocol, I think has been incredibly fascinating. It's been an actual standardization across all these different protocols that everyone has gotten on board. Everyone, Apple, Amazon, Google, that every device should start to all hit this same protocol and actually be compatible. And I think it's something where thinking about, it must have gotten to a point where they realized they will never be able to actually scale this industry because it's just too difficult to make anything work. So when they actually have their back against a wall and something is not working for consumers, it was a reminder, at least this one hopeful moment, that they will get together and actually make something good for the consumer.
Kumbaya, baby.
Yeah.
You guys are just cynics. You're just cynics, that's all. But you're right.
I believe in self-driving cars.
Yeah. You do, don't you?
I think there's something like when this is a thing, like, I think there's worth to well-merited criticism. And when we believe in something, we're going to talk about it. So it's like, it's opposed to being on the side, totally on the side of industry or totally on the side of the critics. I think what's nice about the dynamic we have is like, when something is great, we'll say it's great. And when something sucks, we'll say it sucks.
Yeah. And again, my entire home is just outfitted with HomePods as far as the eye can see.
Does it work?
It works. And then suddenly one thing will break and my wife will kill me because I have all these different scenes set for each bedroom, and like turn it to kids' bedtime and it doesn't work. And so
kids are up till midnight.
Yeah, at moments it works perfectly, and then I feel good. But it will, thanks to the Matter protocol.
Well, let's hope. We can but hope. I have some hope. In Massachusetts, they're planning to ban the collection of cell phone location data. This is something that, frankly, the Congress should be doing. But there, as Carl Bodie writes in Techdirt, the U.S. has long been too corrupt to pass even a basic privacy law for the internet. Most regulatory actions at agencies like the FCC are theatrical at best. Carl is another angry man. And while the FTC has been taking specific action against some companies, we're not doing much in terms of an overarching solution for the broader problem, which means it's often, as is often the case, is left to the states. So Massachusetts, which is preparing to be the first state in the nation to ban the collection and monetization of users' cell phone location data. It's not a law yet. It's called the Location Shield Act. Massachusetts state legislature held a hearing last month on it, a sweeping proposal that would sharply curtail the practice of collecting and selling location data drawn from mobile phones in state. It would also institute a warrant requirement for law enforcement access to location data. Did you know, by the way, they don't need a warrant? They just need it's called a pen register, and they can, in fact, most of the cell phone companies have a portal where law enforcement for a couple of bucks can just log in and find out where you've been, what you up to. The bill would also ban data brokers from providing location information about state residents without court authorization. Law enforcement does not like a bill like this. They like to be able to do this. It's much easier for Congress to say, TikTok, China, bad, get rid of them, than to actually pass an effective privacy bill. According to Carl and Tech Dirt, it seems likely that this will pass. The bill is expected to be passed, but Carl says I wouldn't be shocked because he's a cynic. I wouldn't be shocked if it's dramatically weakened or modified before that happens. Law enforcement and industry definitely doesn't want Massachusetts to disrupt a very broken and very profitable status quo several decades in the making, writes Carl Bodie. But you all would be in favor of such a law, right?
I like it for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that I'm often, especially with phones, apps, you see what they collect, and they obviously collect more than they need. And so, yeah, there should be some protections in terms of why isn't this, something universal where they cannot collect this stuff? It's just there's no reason to, especially on the phone, for instance, there are things that happen that should never happen. And, it's nice to see that Massachusetts is taking the initiative here. I don't know if it will actually spread. I mean, it'd be nice if it spread, but I think that here's a theory that when Snowden came out with his revelations, because these all have they're all downstream of that, people were initially oh my God, what's happening? And then, they were kind of all right, whatever. And the second that happened, it was almost as if it was difficult for any of this privacy stuff to gain momentum, because it's sort of the biggest bombshells had already been revealed and the response is muted. So, we'll see, little things like this, and that's good. But in terms of having something like this be the law of the land, a little more skeptical that could actually happen.
Meanwhile,
for me,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel the regulation needs to be around the profit incentives and the profit motives behind this stuff, because as Alex said, and we've seen repeatedly, from a consumer perspective, it's terrifying at moments, and then everyone forgets about it because it's so difficult to process exactly what's going on and try to see under the hood in the web of ad tech companies and data brokers and what's moving where. It's incomprehensible for the average person. So you just forget about it and scroll your threads and Instagram feed or whatever else. So I think it's up to regulators and policymakers to really focus on who's making money and where and what's okay. Because again, I think I agree, the law enforcement argument is almost guaranteed to derail this effort, because you go out and you say, obviously there's some number of people that are always going to be wary of that, but the safety claim, I'm sure, will convince enough people that they want this to be allowed for law enforcement to be able to track people. So I think it's just it has to live at the layer of who's making money off of you and your location at any point, which is still definitely a lot of people.
Yeah, law enforcement is always going to say, but we do so much of a better job when we know where everybody is, what they're up to, what they've been doing. So don't get in our way. But at least in this country, we've had a long-standing belief that perfect law enforcement is not necessary if it impinges on the freedom and liberty of the people, if it's anti-constitutional. The Senate is considering a new bill, the bipartisan Cooper-Davis Act, on behalf of the DEA, requiring social media companies, encrypted communications providers, and other online services report drug activity on their platforms to the DEA. It advanced to the Senate floor on Thursday. It's for a good cause, right? It's named Cooper Davis was a Kansas teenager who died after unknowingly taking a fentanyl-laced pill he bought on Snapchat. Well, in that case, we've got to make these guys report it. Requires social media companies and other web communication providers to give the DEA users' names and other information when the companies have actual knowledge that illicit drugs are being distributed on their platform. However, if this bill passes, privacy advocates caution there could be a death blow to end-to-end encryption, because it includes language holding companies accountable for conduct They don't report if they, quote, deliberately blind themselves to the violation. How would they deliberate? Oh, by encrypting. End-to-end encryption. Well, now they're liable because we need to know if this activity is occurring. So, Massachusetts residents, please write your state legislators and say, good thing, please pass this bill, protect us against data collection about our location. And the rest of us, write your Congress critters saying the Cooper-Davis Act is, I think, a red herring. It's being introduced, save the Kansas teenagers from buying fentanyl-based pills on Snapchat, but really it is to end end-to-end encryption. And I think this is clearly problematic. And yet it's moving along quite quickly, of course, in Congress because, nobody's in favor of fentanyl-laced pills on Snapchat. All right, little break. Then a couple of final words with our great takeover from the Big Technology podcast. Alex Kantrowitz, great to have you. I should also mention that our other guest also has his own newsletter on Substack called Read Margins. Read Margins. What is Read Margins about, Rajan Roy?
The technology of business and the business of technology. We try to look at the underlying kind of stories that connect technology and business together. So that's how the Big Technology podcast and Margins got together.
Nice.
Similar types of stories.
Nice.
Yeah, I basically read a bunch of Ranjan's stories over a winter break and DM'd him and was like, please come on the show. And he came on a couple of times and we had some good conversations. And then it's like, you can see if you're listening now, like Ranjan's like a brilliant business and tech analyst. And we had some great conversations. And in January, or coming up on January, I was like, why don't we just do this every week? So we added a show on Fridays. That's a quick show, 45 minutes or so. It just covers the week's news. And it's been a blast so far.
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You can read Margins, you can listen to Big Technology, or do both. It's great to have you guys. Our show today brought to you by AG1, the daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. I used to have this pill minder with this big, every morning and night, a fistful of supplements and vitamins and probiotics that I would take. Look, we all want to support our health, but I'm guessing you don't want to swallow a fistful of pills, sacrifice your taste buds, or empty your wallet. That's why you need AG1. Through a science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food-sourced nutrients, AG1 delivers comprehensive support for the brain, the gut, and the immune system. All of that with a delicious beverage I drink every morning. First thing in the morning, mix AG1 in 12 ounces of cold water. It's good. It tastes good, and it really does the job. I'm not surprised. They've been around since 2010. AG1 has improved their formula 52 times in that time in the constant pursuit of making the best foundational nutrition supplement possible. And this will save you time. This will save you confusion, and will save you money. Each serving costs less than $3 a day when you subscribe. That's a lot less than I was paying for all those supplements. AG1 makes it easier for you to drink the highest quality supplements, and it does it all, whether improving digestion, supporting your sleep. It's the best bang for your buck. So if you're looking to take ownership of your health with a simpler, effective investment, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase of a subscription. Go to drinkag1.com/twit. drinkag1.com/twit. We had a great week this week on Twit, and I believe we have a little mini movie to tell you all about it. Watch.
Your beard's distinguished. It's getting a nice gray.
I like
to
it. Look at that.
That's
good.
That's always been
I think
there.
eventually all the hosts of this show will grow beards.
You think so?
It's spreading from Jeff to you.
Stacey fears.
I've been tweezing out my beard forever.
Previously on Twit. This week in Google.
The Biden administration has announced its new smart home cybersecurity label.
This is the U.S. Cyber Trust Mark, and the Biden administration is basically creating a voluntary program, kind of like the EPA's Energy Star thing. And if you see this on a product,
you can trust it.
This product has met cybersecurity standards.
Security Now.
The underground now has a ChatGPT style generative AI all their own without any of the abuse prevention built into the front end. It is known, and I kid you not, as Worm GPT.
Tech News Weekly.
Joining me, you may remember a guest from hosting such podcasts as, well, this one, Megan Maroney. It's good to have you back.
I tried to come into the studio, but I was told I wasn't invited.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. It's hard to fit a third person in there in the middle, right?
That's okay.
Like, it's easier. That's
where my leg is, so I'd have to move my leg, exactly. And I just don't know.
Twit.
That's where my water bottle is. So.
Oh, so great to see Megan on the show. That's awesome. Should mention, by the way, that we've got some big Club Twit events coming up. I'll just mention this briefly and we'll get back to the show because there's a new one we've just announced. But first, let me mention, if you're not a member of Club Twit, $7 a month. The club is great. Lots of special content just for Club Twit members, like this fireside chat with Rod Pyle coming up on the 27th. Of course, we do Home Theater Geeks. We do a number of shows that are only in the club. Scott Wilkinson's Home Theater Geeks is a good example. Rod's This Week in Space launched, as it were, in the club. We've got Hands on Mac, Hands on Windows, the Untitled Linux Show. Also coming up, I know we had to cancel, I'm sad to say, the wonderful Ant Pruitt show, Hands on Photography, but it's really basically been taken into the club. He's going to do a photo critique session on August 4th. And then we are planning a downtown photo walk. I will be there. Lisa will be there Saturday, 6 p.m. in Petaluma. So if you're in Northern California on August 26th, please, and you don't have to be a club member for that. We would love to see you. But if you are in the club, click that interested button so we can get some idea of how many people are showing up. We've got a book club at the end of the month. And then September 7th, I don't know if you were around when Ann interviewed Hugh Howey, the author of the Wool series, which was the basis of the Apple TV Plus show Silo. Hugh is good friends with another friend of the networks, Daniel Suarez, the author of Demon and Freedom TM and so many other great books. They are going to join Ant on stage. I'll be there too, September 7th. I'm not going to miss this one, which is a Thursday at 2 p.m. for a special fireside chat with two of our great science fiction authors. Those are just some of the events that are in the club. You also get ad-free versions of all the shows. You get special shows we don't put out anywhere else. You get access to our fantastic Club Twit Discord full of animated gifs of all kinds. So get in the club, $7 a month. There's yearly plans, there's family plans, there's corporate plans. We would love to have you in Club Twit. Thank you, Mashed Potato, for a very timely animated gift. I have been checking all through the show. Twitter is still blue. There is still a bird. So we don't know when that's going to change. We will end the show with on a sad note. One of my good friends for a long time, a guy who used to come on the Screensavers. He was a hacker. He became a security guru, an expert on social engineering. The great Kevin Mitnick passed away, sad to say, at the young age of 59 this week. Our heartfelt condolences to his family and friends. I think he has a baby on the way. It's very sad, but I thought I would use this occasion to bring up an episode of the Screensavers we did 20 years ago when Kevin joined us. Now, remember, he'd been convicted of hacking, and the conditions of his parole was that he would not go on the internet for some time. 20 years ago, he finally got the letter saying he could go on the internet, and he very kindly agreed to wait until he could come on our show, The Screensavers, on Tech TV. Kevin joined us on The Screensavers. Yes, that's a very young Leo Laporte. And we brought in some special
barred from using the internet.
Guests to join Kevin.
For the first time in 8 years, Kevin Mitnick is finally going to be allowed back online, and it's going to happen today. Welcome, Kevin. It's good to have you on the... Yes. Let me introduce Emmanuel Goldstein. Emmanuel is
one of the
editor
guests
of 2600, the Hacker Quarterly.
He was the devil on Kevin's left shoulder.
Community. Do you know each other?
Oh, very well.
Right.
He actually helped start the Free Kevin movement.
All right, there you go.
So
he got, and I see you brought some gifts.
Yeah, I brought this for myself, but you can have some champagne. It's, champagne for everyone celebrating. And to show you that times have changed, there's a new book out now called Takedown.
Oh no, Takedown.
Not the Takedown that you're so familiar with.
That's a book about you.
No, that was another book.
Kevin hated John Markoff's book about him called Takedown. But he wasn't the only special guest. We wanted to bring an angel in as well on his right shoulder.
On your angelic side. Steve, come on in.
Steve Wozniak.
Congratulations.
Steve gave him the latest model
You held out and didn't get on the internet.
Macintosh
This
PowerBook.
is for you.
Look at this
A little
drawing.
gift.
Who drew that? That's awesome.
I thought it up this morning, but our artist at the company drew it.
Look
I
at
can't
that.
draw it.
At the new,
Sorry. I hope you enjoy it. So don't disturb the picture. And I'm pro-choice. So if you prefer a PC over a Macintosh, Darcy, I'm sure can.
Is this the new PowerBook?
That's it's the current one being sold.
Oh boy,
It's a good one.
I'm gonna put this right here.
And to be fair, that's an Apple product.
Yeah.
Microsoft Office and some blank DVDs.
Anyway, the whole video is probably pirated up online on YouTube. We just really enjoyed the time we got to spend with Kevin. He was an amazing guy. One time he came on the show with a pile of tuna fish cans. He said all he ate in prison, he was in jail for several years, was tuna fish. And he brought in all the leftover tuna cans from his time in prison. 8 years he was banned from the internet, was able to come back on in, I think it was July 2003. I think it was exactly 20 years ago. Kevin Mitnick, R.I.P., rest in peace. Hack in peace, Kevin, dead at the age of 59. Thank you so much to our panelists. I really appreciate the time we get to spend with you, Alex. It's always good to see Alex Kantrowitz. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, great to see you.
Leo, thank you so much. Always great to get a chance to speak with you and talk about the latest in tech. And I think I can speak for both of us with the Big Technology Friday crew. We're just so grateful to get the opportunity to come here and get a chance to show you and our listeners what we do every week. So I really appreciate it.
I'm just glad to have some brains on the show. That's all. I really appreciate it. Ranjan Roy, really nice to meet you as well. He not only hosts the Friday edition of the Big Technology Podcast, he's also a writer and editor of Margins, which is online at readmargins.com. Thank you, Ranjan. I hope you come back. It's great to have you on.
Yep, thank you. Great to meet you.
www.read. You have to type the www in if you're going to go to readmargins.com. Really good stuff. Fascinating to read about tech from the finance point of view. We always forget that, how intertwined the two are. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this week in tech for this week. I thank you all for joining us. If you enjoy the show, join the club, twit.tv/clubtwit. That helps us out. Of course, you can watch us do it live, as with almost all of our shows. We stream them live at live.twit.tv. If you're watching live, try chatting with us live. Our chat room, and you can go there with a browser or an IRC client, is irc.twit.tv. You can also, of course, chat in the Discord if you're a Club Twit member as the show goes on. After the fact, the show's available on our website, This Week in Tech, at twit.tv/thisweekintech. You'll also see on the page there a link to the YouTube channel dedicated to This Week in Tech. That's a great way to share clips with friends or family, or just watch it yourself. There's also probably the best way to get it is subscribe. It's a podcast. Find your favorite podcast player and subscribe to This Week in Tech, and you'll get it every Sunday right after we do it. Every Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Pacific. That's 5 to 8 Eastern. That's 2100 UTC. Thanks to Ranjan and to Alex. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We'll see you next week. Another Twit. It's in the can. Bye-bye.